Before we drop into the dust and silence, take a second to engage the channel. If you enjoy cinematic sci-fi where humanity survives by thinking sideways, tap like, subscribe for more HFY stories, and tell me in the comments what you think makes humans so dangerous when the galaxy underestimates them. Now eyes forward. The coalition marked the zone safe because the numbers said it was safe, and the numbers had never lied to them before. Orbiting sensors skimmed Charon 9 in perfect lattices of light, mapping radiation decay, heat bloom, electromagnetic noise, and the absence of movement. The data flowed through prediction engines that had pacified 100 war worlds. The verdict arrived clean and confident. Hostiles eliminated. Area secure. Green across every display. Dropships burned through the thin atmosphere, their hulls glowing like falling embers. Inside, mixed-species infantry checked weapons and joked about the assignment. Charon 9 had been a stronghold once, a place where things with too many limbs and not enough mercy learned how to kill in the dark. Now it was just another scar on the map, scheduled for reclamation and a brief footnote in Coalition archives. At the back of the lead transport sat the human. He wore no insignia that meant anything to the others. His armor was older than most of the soldiers sharing the bay, scuffed into a dull gray that refused to catch light. A long rifle rested between his boots, cradled like something alive. The name stamped inside his collar read Elias Kane, but no one here used names. His call sign was Ash 11, and it followed him the way a shadow follows a blade. Captain Virex, all polished chitin and ceremonial confidence, glanced at the human and then away again. Humans were included in coalition operations as a courtesy more than a necessity. Their biology was fragile, their technology inelegant, their instincts romanticized beyond reason. Still, there was a clause, an old one written after an ugly campaign on the frontier. When humans asked to send an observer, the coalition humored them. The dropship shuddered as it punched through turbulence. Ash 11 didn't move. His eyes tracked nothing visible, yet they never stopped shifting. He listened, not to the ship, but to the spaces between its sounds. The rhythm felt wrong to him, though he couldn't have explained why without sounding irrational. The ramp lowered onto cracked stone and powdered ash. Wind dragged itself across the plain in thin, whispering sheets. It smelled empty, which was not the same as safe. Coalition boots fanned out, forming a perimeter with mechanical precision. Drones lifted, scanning angles and elevations. The command net buzzed with confirmations. No movement. No heat signatures beyond the patrol. No electromagnetic anomalies. Ash 11 climbed a low ridge without being told. His spotter had been reassigned weeks ago, deemed unnecessary for a mission this clean. He didn't complain. Alone was quieter. He lay prone and brought the rifle to his shoulder. The scope painted the landscape in layers of color and distance. Rock formations jutted like broken teeth. Shadows pooled where the sun should have burned them away. He adjusted his breathing until the world narrowed to details that did not belong. There were no tracks, and that was the first problem. Charon 9's soil held memory. Even wind left signatures here. But the ground was immaculate, as if something had erased its own presence with care. Command, Patrol Alpha reporting no contact, Virex announced, satisfaction curling through his tone. Ash 11 felt the silence press back. He studied a ridgeline where heat bled away too smoothly. He watched a stand of crystalline growth that should have chimed under the wind, yet remained mute. His mind assembled these fragments into a shape he did not like. Observer, a voice crackled in his ear, sharp with impatience. Confirm zone status. Ash 11 did not answer immediately. He dialed his scope tighter, tracing a line that no sensor would prioritize. His finger rested outside the trigger guard. He remembered other places declared safe, other skies just as clear. The patrol advanced, spreading confidence with every step. Ash 11 keyed his mic. Negative. The word slipped out barely louder than a breath, yet it cut through the net like a blade through cloth. There was a pause, short and incredulous. Then irritation flooded in. Clarify, Virex snapped. All systems confirm green. Ash 11 exhaled slowly. Green doesn't mean clear. That is not a reason. It's the only one that matters. The captain bristled, offended by the human's refusal to elaborate. Orders were orders, and doctrine existed to prevent hesitation. The patrol continued, their formation tightening as if proximity alone could substitute for caution. Ash 11 adjusted his position, the rifle an extension of intent rather than hardware. He marked distances, angles, dead ground. He noted where he would fire if the world proved him right, and where he would not have time to save anyone. Down below, laughter flickered across the channel as a soldier kicked a fragment of old wreckage. Confidence swelled, bright and brittle. 11 felt the moment settle, that subtle shift when a place decides what it is about to become. His jaw tightened. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He simply stayed where he was, watching a silent landscape that watched back, and waited for the numbers to be wrong. If you felt that unease creep in, let me know in the comments whether you would have trusted the scanners or the man who said no. The next moment decides who lives. The word lingered on the channel longer than it should have, an irritation that refused to dissolve. Coalition Command logged #11's objection as a human anomaly, a statistical outlier in an otherwise perfect operation. The patrol advanced anyway, boots crunching softly over terrain that should have remembered them. Captain Virex ordered a tighter formation, not out of fear but decorum. A marked safe zone was not a place for second guesses. Doctrine existed so that individuals did not slow the will of the many, and the human, prone on his ridge, represented exactly that kind of friction. 11 watched the patrol move through his scope. They were competent soldiers, every one of them trained to react quickly and decisively once a threat revealed itself. That was the flaw. Reaction assumed warning. Reaction assumed sound and motion and error. Whatever waited here had left none of those behind. Observer, Virex said again, his voice clipped. State your justification for negative confirmation. 11 considered the question and dismissed it. Justification implied persuasion, and persuasion required shared instincts. He did not have those with the beings below him. No disturbance, he replied. That is a confirmation of safety. No, 11 said. It's the opposite. Irritation sharpened into something closer to offense. A murmur passed through the command net, analysts and officers exchanging quick assessments. The models remained unchanged. The drones showed nothing. The human's words sat alone, unsupported and inconvenient. 11 shifted his weight slightly, easing pressure from his elbows. He let his breathing slow until even his heartbeat felt distant. Through the scope, he traced the horizon again, not searching for enemies but for absence. His mind moved in quiet loops learned long before he joined the coalition, back when survival depended on noticing what predators tried hardest to hide. He remembered a training instructor who had spoken softly about ambushes and graves. If the ground looks clean, it's because someone cleaned it. If it's quiet, listen harder. The patrol crossed an invisible line 11 had already marked. He felt it rather than saw it, a subtle tightening in his chest. He checked the wind, then checked it again. The air slid past rock faces and vanished where it shouldn't have, as if swallowed. Command, Virex said, confidence returning now that distance had passed without incident. We are approaching the central sector. No contact. 11 adjusted the scope's thermal filter and frowned. The colors bled too evenly across the field, smoothing variations that should have existed. It looked like a painting that had been overworked, detail erased in pursuit of perfection. Hold, 11 said. The word was ignored. He did not repeat himself. Humans learned early that repetition did not make truth louder, only easier to dismiss. Instead, he tracked a cluster of stone spires near the patrol's left flank. They formed a natural funnel, one that any half-decent tactician would exploit. The drone skimmed past them without pause, sensors gliding over surfaces that offered nothing back. 11 felt a familiar frustration settle in, cold and controlled. He did not resent the patrol for their faith in machines. He resented the cost of learning otherwise. A junior officer broke into the channel, curiosity edging his tone. Observer, if you're seeing something, why not mark it? 11's lips pressed thin. Because the thing I'm seeing doesn't want to be marked. Silence followed, heavier now, threaded with unease. Virex inhaled sharply, then exhaled in a way that broadcast restraint. You are outvoted, he said. Maintain overwatch and be prepared to engage if necessary. That, at least, was sensible. 11 rolled his shoulder minutely and aligned the rifle with a gap between two spires. The distance was long, the angle unforgiving. He adjusted for variables that had no numbers attached, the kind you learned by burying friends. Down below, the patrol slowed as the terrain narrowed. Their spacing collapsed, forced closer by stone and shadow. It was efficient movement, textbook and clean. Ash, 11 felt a pulse of regret. They were doing everything right for the wrong fight. A flicker passed through his scope, so brief it could have been imagination. He froze, muscles locking without conscious thought. The flicker came again, a ripple where no heat should have shifted. Something was there, bending light and silence around itself. Ash 11's finger slid closer to the trigger, stopping short. Firing now would be premature. Firing now would confirm his presence and reveal nothing of theirs. Patience, he reminded himself. Let them commit. The patrol reached the funnel's throat. A soldier laughed at something over a private channel, the sound bleeding faintly into the net. Ash, 11 felt his jaw tighten. He tracked the ripple as it spread, multiplying into patterns that only made sense if you accepted that the enemy was already inside the formation. Command, Ash, 11 said quietly, urgency sharpening his tone for the first time. They're not gone. What is your? The sentence cut off as one of the patrol's rear soldiers stumbled. There was no report, no flash, just a sudden, impossible absence where a life had been. Ash, 11 exhaled, steady and controlled, and centered his scope on the place where the world had blinked. He did not fire yet. He waited because now the zone was no longer marked safe, and the next second would teach everyone why the human had whispered no. The stumble became a fall, and the fall became a void where a soldier should have been. No sound followed, not even the wet punctuation of violence the patrol had been trained to expect. One moment there was weight and breath and motion, and the next there was a gap in the formation that refused to explain itself. Panic tried to bloom, but discipline strangled it halfway. Weapons rose, muzzles searching for permission to fire at something that did not announce itself. Sensors flared to life, sweeping harder, faster, more desperately. They found nothing. Ash 11 fired. The rifle spoke once, a muted crack that vanished into the open air. The round traveled through a seam in the world Ash 11 had been watching since touchdown. It struck something that bent away from heat and light but could not bend away from momentum. The impact revealed itself as a brief distortion, like water shuddering around a stone, followed by collapse. A shape hit the ground and stayed there. The channel erupted in overlapping voices. Shock, fear, disbelief. Ash, 11 ignored them and worked the bolt with practiced economy. His scope tracked the ripple spreading outward, the way a lie unravels once the truth pierces it. Contact, someone shouted, too late to be useful. The enemy shed its patience. The air fractured as multiple distortions surged forward, no longer content to remain unseen. They moved with predatory intelligence, herding the patrol inward, cutting off lines of retreat with silent precision. Soldiers fired at guesses and echoes, rounds snapping into stone and shadow. Ash, 11 became stillness. He stopped thinking in terms of targets and began thinking in terms of inevitabilities. Where one distortion moved, another would counter. Where the patrol hesitated, something would strike. He placed shots not where the enemy was, but where it would have to be to complete the kill. His second round tore through another ripple, closer this time. The distortion screamed as it died, the sound brief and alien, like metal tearing underwater. That sound changed everything. Fear spiked, but so did clarity. Form on the human's marks, Virex barked, his voice tight but controlled. Follow his fire. Ash 11 did not respond. He did not need to. His shots spoke in his place, each one a period at the end of a sentence the enemy had been writing since before the dropships arrived. The creatures revealed themselves in fragments as they fell. Limbs folded the wrong way. Surfaces shimmered with adaptive membranes that failed catastrophically once penetrated. These were not beasts driven by hunger alone. They were soldiers, evolved or engineered to erase the warning signs of war. A distortion surged toward the patrol center, faster than the others. Ash, 11 tracked it through 3 layers of interference, heart rate steady, breath shallow. He fired through a curtain of refracted light and watched the thing collapse mid-stride, its mass finally conceding to gravity. The patrol began to move again, this time with purpose. They clustered near hard cover Ash, 11 had silently designated minutes ago. Shots became measured. Panic bled away, replaced by grim focus. Ash, 11, Virex said, the honorific gone from his voice. How many? More than they think, Ash 11 replied. He spotted the commander by absence alone, a void that shaped the chaos around it. The distortions curved subtly toward a central point, coordinating without sound. Ash-11 shifted his position, crawling a meter to the left to open a narrow firing lane. The angle was obscene. The distance worse. He did not hesitate. The round cut through layered stone and adapted flesh alike. The void collapsed inward, revealing a larger silhouette that shuddered and fell. For a heartbeat, the field went still, as if the planet itself were deciding whether to breathe again. Then the remaining distortions faltered. The enemy tried to withdraw, movements losing cohesion as their anchor vanished. Ash-11 continued firing, methodical now, denying escape routes before they were chosen. Each shot reduced the chaos until only silence remained, ragged and heavy. The patrol stood among fallen shapes they could finally see. Blood shimmered where it touched the ground, colors bending away from the light. Soldiers stared, weapons lowered but not yet relaxed. Ash-11 scanned for another full minute before easing his finger from the trigger. Only when he was certain the silence was earned did he speak again. "They're done here," he said. Virex swallowed, looking at the carnage and then up toward the ridge where the human lay concealed. "You knew," he said quietly. It was not an accusation. Ash-11 did not answer. He was already watching the edges of the battlefield, the places where survivors would go if there were any left to run. The zone was quiet now, but it was a different kind of quiet, one that came after truth. And somewhere beyond the ridgeline, the human waited, knowing the story was not finished yet. The patrol did not celebrate. They stood among the fallen distortions in a silence that no longer felt deceptive, only heavy with consequence. Medics moved with careful urgency, tending to the wounded while stepping around bodies that still unsettled the eye. Karen 9 had been quiet before, but now it was honest about why. Captain Virex climbed the ridge alone. His movements lacked the stiffness of command ceremony, replaced by something closer to humility. Ash-11 remained prone, scope still aligned with the horizon, as if the fight might resume the moment he blinked. "You saved them," Virex said when he was close enough to be heard without the channel. "You saved us." Ash-11 nodded once, the smallest acknowledgement possible. Gratitude made him uncomfortable. Survival did not require praise. Virex studied the landscape through his own eyes, without filters or overlays. "Our sensors showed nothing," he said. "Our doctrine said advance." Ash-11 finally shifted, rolling onto his side so the captain could see his face. It was unremarkable, lined by sun and fatigue rather than scars. "Doctrine looks for proof," he said. "Predators look for permission." Virex frowned, turning the words over. "You saw them before they moved." "I saw where they didn't move," Ash-11 replied. "Nothing lives without leaving a mark. When a place pretends otherwise, it's lying." Below them, soldiers secured the area with a caution that bordered on reverence. They no longer moved because the models told them to. They moved because the human had been right. A junior analyst broke into the channel, voice tight with urgency. "Command, we're detecting residual energy trails beyond the engagement zone. Fading fast." Ash-11 was already back behind his rifle. "They're pulling back," he said. "Not retreating. Repositioning." Virex hesitated for only a breath. "Recommendations?" The question landed heavier than any metal. Ash-11 answered without looking away from the scope. "Cut them off before they adapt. They'll choose high ground and shadow. Same mistake every apex predator makes. They think height equals control." Orders relayed instantly. Units shifted, this time guided by the humans' quiet predictions rather than probability curves. The pursuit was swift and decisive. The remaining distortions fell in places Ash-11 named seconds before they were visible, as if the future itself had betrayed them. When it was over, truly over, the planet seemed to exhale. Command convened an emergency review, officers standing in a loose semicircle around Ash-11 as if proximity might confer understanding. Virex addressed them, his voice stripped of earlier certainty. "Our models failed," he said. "Not because they were flawed, but because they assumed the universe behaves honestly." Ash-11 met their gazes one by one. "It doesn't," he said. "It behaves efficiently." An older commander asked the question that had been forming since the first shot. "How do humans survive without certainty?" 11 considered the battlefield, the fallen predators, the narrow margin between order and extinction. We don't wait for it, he said. We live in the gap between what should be and what is. The words settled into the group, altering something fundamental. Coalition doctrine had always chased clarity, the clean answer, the green light. The human offered something messier and far more durable. Orders came down from orbit, revised mid-mission. Human overrides were no longer advisory. They were mandatory. When a human observer said stop, the advance would halt. When he said run, no one would ask why. 11 listened to the update without reaction. Policy shifts were abstractions. What mattered was the next place someone would declare safe. Virex lingered as the others dispersed. You could have been anywhere, he said. Why this assignment? 11 looked past him, toward the horizon where light fractured into pale bands. Because someone was going to get it wrong, he said. And I don't like being late. Dropships descended to extract the patrol, their engines stirring dust that now told the truth of what had happened. 11 disassembled his rifle with careful motions, each piece cleaned and checked before being stowed. The ritual steadied him. As the ships lifted, Karen 9 shrank beneath them, no longer a clean scar but a lesson burned into Coalition memory. Virex watched the human across the bay, seeing him not as an anomaly but as a necessary flaw in an otherwise brittle system. 11 met his gaze briefly, then looked away, already elsewhere in his thoughts. Somewhere, another zone was being marked safe. Somewhere, numbers were lining up in comforting patterns. And somewhere, a human would be asked to confirm them. The official declaration came an hour later, stripped of its earlier confidence and rewritten with careful restraint. Karen 9 was no longer described as reclaimed or pacified. It was listed as neutralized, with an addendum that ran longer than the original mission brief. Every sentence in that addendum pointed, in one way or another, to a single human voice that had refused to agree with the numbers. 11 listened to none of it. He sat alone near the open ramp of the dropship, helmet off, eyes half-lidded as the planet slid away beneath them. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind the familiar weight of aftermath. Survival always arrived quietly, like an embarrassed guest who never stayed long. Across the bay, Captain Virex watched him with a focus that bordered on discomfort. The human had not raised his voice, not once. He had not argued, threatened, or demanded authority. He had simply been right, and that unsettled everything Virex had been trained to trust. You never asked for command, Virex said at last. 11 shrugged. Didn't need it. That kind of certainty usually comes with ambition. 11's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Certainty gets people killed. I settle for probability and bad feelings. Virex let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. You changed doctrine today. No, 11 replied. I reminded it what it forgot. The ship docked with the carrier, metal kissing metal in a sound that echoed through the bay. Medics and officers moved in practiced flows, the machinery of war resetting itself for the next engagement. 11 reassembled his rifle and locked it into its cradle, his hands steady, precise. Command summoned him once more, this time not to question but to listen. A projection flared to life, replaying the first moments of the ambush from a dozen angles. Each view told the same story, a perfect system failing because it expected honesty from an enemy that thrived on deceit. An analyst cleared his throat. Your initial objection has been archived as a case study, he said. The phrase you used will be included in training simulations. 11 raised an eyebrow. The phrase. Negative. A ripple of subdued amusement moved through the room, but it carried respect now. The word had weight. It had stopped an advance, broken an ambush, and saved lives that would have been footnotes. Virex turned to him. We have another operation pending. Similar parameters. Another safe zone. 11 didn't ask where. He already knew how this would go. You want me to confirm it? I want you to tell me if it's lying, Virex said. The next descent was quieter. No jokes, no casual confidence. The patrol waited for the human's cue before taking a single step. 11 moved ahead, alone again, the familiar shape of responsibility settling over him. The new zone looked cleaner than the last. Too clean. The kind of clean that tried too hard. He stopped. The patrol stopped with him. 11 raised his fist, then slowly lowered it, eyes scanning the empty expanse. The silence here was sharper, stretched thin over something coiled and patient. He felt the truth of it settle into his bones. Virex's voice came through, steady but edged with anticipation. Status. Ash-11 did not whisper this time. He spoke clearly, the word carrying across open channels and command decks alike. Negative. The attack came instantly, as if the enemy had been waiting for permission to exist. Distortions tore themselves out of the air, faster and more numerous than before. But this time the patrol did not freeze. They did not search for confirmation. They moved. Ash-11 fired, his shots stitching a path through the chaos. The patrol followed, executing maneuvers that mirrored his intent before he finished forming it. The enemy adapted, shifting patterns, sacrificing stealth for speed. Ash-11 adapted faster. He climbed, gaining elevation under fire that never quite found him. At the ridge's peak, he saw the heart of it, a mass of overlapping distortions coordinating the assault. This was not an ambush. It was a test. He smiled then, a thin, feral expression that never reached his eyes. "You should have stayed quiet," he murmured. The final shot cut through the battlefield like a verdict. The coordinating mass collapsed, its control severed in an instant. The remaining distortions faltered, then broke, fleeing into terrain that no longer protected them. The patrol surged forward, relentless now, driven not by doctrine but by trust. When the last of the enemy fell, the silence that followed was absolute, unchallenged and real. Ash-11 lowered his rifle and stood alone on the ridge, wind tugging at his armor. Below him, soldiers looked up, not in awe but in understanding. This was what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not dominance. Not perfection. Refusal. Virex climbed to stand beside him, gaze sweeping the cleared zone. "Safe?" he asked. Ash-11 considered the question then nodded once. "For now." The report that followed spread faster than any battle footage. Commanders across coalition space began hesitating before declaring safety, before advancing, before trusting silence. They waited for the human word, the one that could halt fleets and save worlds. Somewhere on another frontier, Ash-11 prepared to move again. And somewhere else, a commander hovered over a console, swallowed and delayed, marking a zone safe, because he remembered a single word that had once stopped a war before it began.